Is podcasting in your future? I'm Tonya Hall, and joining me is Tyler Moody, Vice President and General Manager, WarnerMedia Podcast Network at WarnerMedia. Welcome, Tyler.
Thank you.
Give us a brief summary of your background in the media industry, if you will.
I'll be as brief as I can. The bulk, actually, the longer I spend in podcasting, I should probably drop the word bulk. But I started in radio. I've been a radio fan my whole life. Listened to radio growing up. Idolized the radio stars of Chicago, and started at the Loop in Chicago, and then started doing the whole town to town, up and down the dial thing in the radio business. And eventually fell into news and was at CNN Radio for a long time. And that's where I started mixing in digital aspects of audio storytelling. And I saw podcasting doing a lot of fun things that we used to do a long time ago in radio, and drifted more towards podcasting. I've been at WarnerMedia, formerly Turner, for about 17 years, most of that with CNN Radio, and now the last 4 years at what was the Turner Podcast Network and now the WarnerMedia Podcast Network.
Podcasting continues to grow. Continues to grow in popularity, but when it comes to a successful podcast, content and topic, I guess, are still king, right?
Yeah, this is, it's a discussion that can go across mediums, not just podcasting, but is content king or is distribution king? And if you from your point of view, if you put one in the driver's seat, the other one's always sitting shotgun. So you can't force somebody to listen to a podcast. They don't scroll through the podcasting dial and accidentally land on one. So having visibility and being able to acquire an audience is important. But once they're there, the content has to deliver on the experience. You have to deliver on what you promised them and what got them there in the first place. So if it's not good, it won't last. And you can always make the argument then that it has to start with the content. But also you can put out a really, really good show. If you can't get people to find it in an easy way, it also won't matter. So it's an age-old, content versus distribution kind of thing, but they go hand in hand.
To your point, though, it really isn't just about content. There are the technical aspects that need to be included in, and you and I have talked about that: story structure, editing, audio and video quality, which we discussed, B-roll, and storytelling aids like B-roll. So talk a little bit about those kinds of elements.
Well, I think that, in podcasting, the audio is still, it's more than 99% of the experience. Maybe people are looking at show notes, and I think some apps will start experimenting with other visual items, but it's a listening experience. And so there's, the skills of a storyteller and producer that maybe grew up doing things more visually, that, you need to strip away what people can see. And even on a TV screen, you get to put up graphics, and it fills the environment of what the consumer is bringing in as they're watching your content. It's all audio. So you need to have the story right. You have to have the sound right, the scoring right. It's all about the audio.
Speaking of riding shotgun, you have to build demand and distribute. Talk more about that.
Well, I think for the tech viewers in your audience, they all know what an RSS feed is and how media files get attached to things. What I tell other folks is it's an RSS feed. It's a URL that has an audio file attached to it, and just like you need a browser to see a web page, you need a quote unquote browser to consume a podcast feed. So that's obviously podcast apps, and Apple and Spotify and Pocket Casts and iHeart and Overcast and Downcast. There's a whole bunch of them out there to choose from. They all do different things and provide different opportunities for publishers to try to attract audience.
How do people consume podcast content? What are the leading devices and platforms?
Oh, by far it's mobile phones. Far and away mobile phones is the number one device that people are using. Smart speakers are growing in popularity and consumption. I think that's a pretty frictionless experience, but far and away mobile phones, number one.
What revenue models are the most sustainable?
Well, it is mostly an ad-supported business. The IAB today just came out with their revenue projections for the year, and it's still growing. It's mostly an ad-supported business. There are some paywalled apps. There are some subscription podcasts, but for the most part, the industry is ad-supported. I think that you'll find a lot of independent podcasters that will use some sort of funding mechanism to have their audience donate to them directly. And there's also folks out there where podcasting is just one piece of what they do. Maybe they're an author selling a book, or they've got a newsletter that people subscribe to, and podcasting is just one part of it. It doesn't necessarily have to be the revenue driver, but mostly it's ads. And ads with custom codes in them and custom URLs for people to remember.
What type of advertising is most successful? I mean, you talk about custom. I mean, is it the live read? Is that still a popular and successful method, or what methods work best?
The host read ad is still the dominant ad creative, and it's trading on the relationship that listeners have with their hosts. And so they get to, there's a companionship that happens with listening, where when you have a podcast that you listen to over and over and you subscribe to, you get used to the host. They feel like a friend, and when a friend tells you, I use this product, you should try it too, it carries more weight. And so that is still the dominant ad form in podcasting. It's also prevalent in radio. And for those old enough to remember, or maybe those who have seen old reruns, I mean, Ed McMahon used to do dog food commercials on The Tonight Show. The host read ad is nothing new, but it certainly resonates in this medium with the audience.
All right, you're dating yourself, Tyler.
I saw it all on YouTube. I've never saw it live.
Has the pandemic caused any changes to consumption patterns? And if so, might those stick around in the future?
I think we saw some minor shifts in listening, where I think there was, early on in the pandemic, there was a surge in news and information podcasts, which have always been successful and always been a large category in podcasting. But there was certainly a surge in news consumption at the beginning of the pandemic. I think that has leveled off a little bit, and we're starting to see back to normal levels of consumption and also across genres. I did see some folks reporting that they saw time shifting a little bit. And I don't mean, time shifting content. I mean, they weren't seeing early morning listening as much, where they still had the size of the audience, but it was a little later in the day.
So what advice can you offer business leaders and entrepreneurs who are considering podcasting as a part of their marketing strategy?
Oh man, as a part of a marketing strategy, I love that question. Thank you. I think that the host read ad is something for people to look at and consider and fold into their marketing campaign. I think that if digital audio is not already a part of your marketing mix, it needs to be. The audiences are growing. The audiences are really engaged. They're not passive. They trust the hosts that read ads to them. But also, I really encourage marketers to think about creative specifically for podcasting that's separate from repurposing a radio ad, or stripping the audio off of a TV ad. It's a separate piece of creative, and there's a real opportunity for that next tier of advertising. The host read ad is always going to be king, but that next tier where we have characters or CEOs representing brands, and maybe their voices are in enough podcasts or familiar enough to audiences that they can kind of build a little bit of a relationship there, and that's where I think there's real opportunity for brand advertising and marketing in podcasts.
Tyler Moody, Vice President and General Manager, WarnerMedia Podcast Network at WarnerMedia. If somebody wants to connect with you, Tyler, maybe they want to find out more about podcasting, how can they do that?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. My handle is at Tyler S. Moody. And something you'll find a pinned tweet to the top there. I actually get a lot of family and colleagues and friends that reach out to me directly and say, hey, can you talk to my niece? Can you talk to my cousin, my neighbor? I know somebody that wants to get into podcasting. Can you talk to them? And I do, and I love doing it. But there's a pinned tweet at the top of my Twitter feed with a Calendly link, because I want to open my network to beyond just people who happen to know me. And if you think, 15 or 30 minutes talking with me about podcasting would be useful to you, I've opened up some time slots every month for people to book and have some time to talk.
I love that. Thanks again for joining us, Tyler.
Thank you.
And find more of my interviews right here or at tonyahall.net. Thanks for watching.